video is going to continue a discussion of some ideas from my paper, which came out a couple years ago. The paper is called From Being to Goodness to Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit of Happiness. Came out in a journal called Lex Naturalis in 2021. And this is kind of a video series right around the time of, it's coming out right around the time of our Semiquincentennial, 250 years of history of the United States of America. It's a Declaration of Independence from Great Britain, and it's been a good run. I don't know what else to say. It's been a good run, and I think we got a lot more 250-year marks to celebrate. I don't think I'll be around for them, but maybe you will. But in this paper, I consider the idea of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness as real objective values, as unalienable rights that are grounded in human nature. And in order to do that and to defend those views, what I claim is that we have to have an account of, first, the nature of reality, the nature of existence, and then from there we have to give an account of the nature of the good, or goodness. Sometimes philosophers call that a meta-ethics. So I'm going to do both of those things in this paper, and then show some accounts of how life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, knowing those things, are necessary but not sufficient for you to live a good life and for me to live a good life. So we'll start with the metaphysics of the Declaration of Independence. Kind of a weird thing to say, the metaphysics of the Declaration. But there's always a metaphysics. And the Declaration is no exception. And thankfully, there was a lot more common sense 250 years ago. There's still quite a bit around, but in the upper echelons of the powers that be, it's a lot of lack. Well, try and keep this academic, okay? So there's always a metaphysics, a view of the nature of reality behind ethical and political claims. This is no less true for the claims made in the American Declaration of Independence, the founding document of the United States. Consider the claim that it is a self-evident truth that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are unalienable rights. Now, this claim requires a metaphysics in which things must exist and be knowable in a self-evident way and have the properties in which unalienable rights can inhere. The most basic metaphysical reality required for things to exist, which can be the bearers of unalienable rights, is existence itself. Thus, in order to defend the claim that it is a self-evident truth that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are unalienable rights, one must defend a view of the nature of existence that makes the truth of such a claim possible. In what follows, I will offer a brief defense of a common-sense view of existence, which can serve as a basis for the defense of this claim. Jacques Maritain wrote, "It is in things themselves that metaphysics finds its object. It is the being of sensible and material things, the being of a world of experience which is immediately accessible field of investigation." So Maritain understood that from our experiences of the sensible world, we can come to know the nature of existence itself. Although we can know the nature of existence itself from sense experience, it does take some intellectual work to get there. The path to get there has a few discrete steps. Now, Maritain treats these steps in a long footnote in his book called Existence in the Existent. It's on page 26 through 28, footnote 13. And these steps are further elaborated by another American philosopher named George Klubertans in his Introduction to the Philosophy of Being. Here's a brief summary of those steps. So now what this is a short account. I've gone over this in my other work, especially in my book, The Heresy of Heresies, A Defense of Christian Common Sense Metaphysical Realism. And I'm going to walk you through them here. And these are not easy to think through. They're discrete, simple steps that you can follow along and see in order to see what the nature of existence is. Okay, so step one. A subject S, like you or me, subject just means like a person, human person. Subject S simply apprehends direct sensory objects, O1 through OM. So just look around here, you see a bunch of objects that I'm sensing, you're sensing through the video. And then step two, so look, if you deny that, I can't help you. if you look around the room you're in and you don't think there's any objects in that room, well, just quit the video and go do something else, right? Because Your philosophy is done then. You can't argue with a skeptic. Step 2, you can rebut a skeptic, but don't try and refute them because it's just annoying. Okay. Step 2, if you have problems with this, check out Roderick Chisholm's The Problem with the Criterion. We can talk about that some other time. Okay. Step 1, have some sensory experiences. Step 2, you judge that being in general is had in common. Being is general and had in common among the particulars. This is called the judgment of generalization. So you look around and you see a bunch of stuff, like, hey, all this stuff is real. Pretty good. Some people struggle with that. Step 3. Then I judge that being is separate from the properties, both essential and accidental, of the object. So I look at a tree and I think, all the stuff that is common out here in the background. That thing is green. That thing's a tree. There's some concrete here, some water here. That's blue. That's blue. That's green. This is kind of gray, right? And this is black, right? My sunglasses are black. I think, look, these things are all existent, but to be is not to be anything, right? Because this can exist and have the color black. This can exist, the sky can exist and have the color blue. The water can exist and have the color blue. So existence is different from those things. Either to be an accidental quality, like the height of the tree. The tree could still exist and be shorter, right? So existence is something over and above just having qualities. This is called the judgment of separation. And then step 4, I know through judgment that being is essential actualization. Okay. In other words, I come to see that to be is to actualize an essential nature. To be is to have or express a quality, an essential quality that makes a thing to be and to be the kind of thing that it is. Okay. Now that was really quick. And in my other book, I go through this in much more detail. Okay. It's not my own view originally. It's a view that goes back at least to Aquinas and on through back to Aristotle and Plato in their own way. Okay. So the most important epistemic process through which we know that existence is essential actualization is the act of judgment. Now, Martaine, in his Existence and the Existent, writes this about metaphysical insight gained through judgment. He says this is quoting Martaine here. Forming this judgment, the intellect, on the one hand, knows the subject as singular, indirectly reflecting on phantasms. So when I am aware of a tree and I think of the tree, I have a thought of a tree, those are called phantasms, or call them ideas or images, if you like. And on the other hand, I affirm that this singular object exercises the act of existing. In other words, the intellect itself exercises upon the notion of the subject an act, the act of affirming, by which it, that is my intellect, lives intentionally the existence of the thing. Okay, so in other words, I am aware directly in my experience of an object that for it to exist is to exemplify its essential nature. Okay, and I judge that through the experience. And it's objective, the reality that is had by common sense experience. Okay. So according to Martaine, it is by the judgment itself, through the intuition of sense, that the intellect grasps the immaterializing the experience and reaches the actus essendi. That's Martaine's words. Reaches the actus essendi. The actus essendi is what I am here calling the act of essential exemplification in a singular particular, which we know by experiencing it through common sense experience. So I look at the tree, I'm aware of it, I can grasp that. Its existence is to exemplify the essence that's unique to it as an existing thing, and that is something that I reach and am directly aware of, this act of existence. Okay. Martaine says that in judgment, the intellect receives intentionally the act of existence, which is really in the thing which has it. Since things exist, and since our minds are able to receive the existence of things, our minds can know through judgment that existence is essential exemplification. Thus, if you have any sense experience at all, then you have experienced the nature of existence, even if you've not thought about being aware of the nature of existence. Judgment is that act of our minds which brings to light an awareness to the intellect of that which is already present to it, namely the existence. That existence is essential exemplification. So, look, anytime you have an ordinary sense experience, you've already got present before your consciousness the nature of existence. Now, you probably haven't reflected on it before. You don't sit there and think about every sense experience you have. But philosophically, if you do that, you can be aware that for the thing to exist is just for it to exemplify its essential nature. Okay, that's what Martaine is saying. Now, similar to Martaine, George Coubertin describes judgment in this way. Quote, Judgment, therefore, directly reaches the esse, the ESSE, it's a kind of a Latin term, which I'm calling here essential actualization of a thing. For in the judgment, we know that a thing is, a direct perceptual judgment is a knowledge that some existent is. The act of existing thus attained is the esse, the essential actualization, of a material singular thing, end quote. Thus, we attain knowledge that existence is essential exemplification by means of judgment of what is already present to the intellect through common sense experience. Thus, from common sense experience, we can know that existence is essential exemplification. So, if we can know that existence is essential exemplification, then we have metaphysical knowledge of the nature of reality from which we can develop theories of goodness which apply to both personal and, check this out, here's the 1776 connection, political ethics. So when the founders wrote the Declaration, they had in the back of their minds a metaphysics which, for the most part, there's some quibbles depending on which philosopher you think they derive some of these ideas from. But in my view, that metaphysics is just the one that I've given you here, that we can know that things have essential natures. Okay. Thus, ethics and politics can rest on a metaphysics which is both knowable and commonsensical. So in the next video, I'll turn and we'll look and see how the basic metaphysics of goodness itself flows from existence understood as essential exemplification. So let me kind of wrap up here. So if you want to accept the Declaration of Independence as still valid today, and in my own view it is. In fact, I don't know, I've got lots of views on this, but in my own view, the Declaration is the founding document of the country. The Constitution is and should never depart from it. So the Constitution is secondarily derived from the Declaration, in my view, and should never depart from it. So if you want to defend that document, that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are unalienable rights, you want to still defend that today, you have to defend a realist metaphysics, a realist epistemology, and a common sense approach to the nature of human beings as such, and metaphysics and epistemology and truth, and ultimately goodness. All that has to be there. Without that, good luck trying to defend the Declaration, and then on down to the Constitution and on down to our way of life. Okay. Thanks for watching. We'll get into the next section on how metaethics is important and connected, deeply connected to the Declaration. All right, thanks for watching.
Stay psyched, Grom. You.